on? Blue? Hooray! There we go. Right. Okay. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to see us. This will be the Pheonix Point discussion. So I'm going to go through some bits and pieces and talk to you a little bit about it. But first of all, introductions. Okay. So you all know who I am, but I'll introduce us for the benefit of the Twitch stream and everything else that's going on. So I'm Alan Stroud, and obviously for Lavecon, I'm Station Commander here, but at the same time, I'm co-lead writer for Pheonix Point. It's a project that I've been working on with Julian Gollop and Snapshot Games now for the best part of 14 months. We've been working on that in comparison with Chaos Reborn, and had a very, very successful crowdfunding campaign, which has recently concluded on FIG at somewhere around $765,000 around. He says it's actually now gone up to $776,000, but you know, as things go. So to my left, we have Kevin Hill, Unstable Voltage, who is the community manager for the Pheonix Point game community. So he's the equivalent of Ed for Pheonix Point. And then obviously we've got two Captain Cluelesses on the end.
That's not strictly true, is it?
No, it's
and they're not strictly false either.
Obviously, we have John Stabler and Christopher Jarvis, who both are avid Chaos Reborn fans, used to run Chaos Champs, which was the Chaos Reborn sports tournament. And we will be looking at talking through doing some additional Pheonix Point podcasting later on this year. So that's actually something we're actively looking at in the next couple of weeks. First revelation for the Twitch stream. There we go. Look at that. Yes, there will be a Pheonix Point podcast.
So can I just chip in at this point? So I am slightly clueless about it. It is true in the sense that I'm quite clueless about Pheonix Point itself. One of the reasons that I'm involved in this and was so excited about Pheonix Point is, this is going to be a slightly contentious thing to say at an Elite Dangerous convention. The only thing that I love more than space simulation games is turn-based strategy. Okay, so someone heard me in the week talk about the fact that even though I love it and I've put hundreds of hours into it, the only reason that Elite Dangerous isn't my number one favorite game is because it's not my number one favorite genre. My number one favorite genre is turn-based strategy. So to just give an introduction from my point of view, obviously we talk about Julian Gollop and we talk about Pheonix Point from the point of view of obviously creating the original UFO Enemy Unknown. If you are talking about turn-based strategy, Julian Gollop is the granddaddy of turn-based strategy design. We're not just talking about UFO, we're talking about Laser Squad, we're talking about what's the name of it?
Rebel Star,
thank you very much. And we're talking about a game which I personally love and which I will continue to pimp to everybody until they go and play it. It's so obscure you can buy it pre-owned in like Game Station and things, not Game Station, like Game, for like $2.99. If you have a 3DS, go and buy Ghost Recon Shadow Wars.
And
it is XCOM on a handheld platform.
Specifically relevant to this.
It is specifically relevant to this,
which we'll touch on in a bit.
Yeah, there is a reason that I am very, very excited about Pheonix Point, and because, like I say, Ghost Recon Shadow Wars is an amazing turn-based strategy. It's full of character. It's full of strategic decisions, and it does it without. And this is where I'm going to be asking questions later. It does it without the reliance on RNG that makes the modern XCOM games such a kind of Marmite experience, in a sense.
Okay.
I'm going to leave it there.
John, anything you want to add? Or
well, I'm going to kind of echo that because apart from playing Frontier on the Amiga, you know, I spent a lot of time playing Chaos and Laser Squad back in the day. So any kind of aspects of that have been brought back. XCOM kind of went past me, but
it's good. It is really good.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it down. It is really good.
Yeah, but
it captures that thing of you have an expert marksman with a handgun standing next to an alien, and instead of shooting it, he decides to shoot at the pavement in front of his feet.
Yeah, I love that.
It's what I lovingly refer to as a Julian Gollop 95% chance to hit, which I'm hoping that Pheonix Point will address.
Well, we will come a little bit to that in a minute. So the plan here is that essentially we're going to talk through some of the introduction of what this is, give you a bit of an explanation of what we're trying to do. I'm going to then take a few questions, and Kevin will take a few questions from here, and then we'll take questions from you guys as well, if that's okay, and we'll try and answer anything we can. One thing you will note, and I'm not being snarky or anything else by saying this, one thing you'll note is that actually, as a development team, if we don't know the answer, it's probably because we haven't done it yet. So you'll probably get a very open and frank and honest answer in terms of everything that's there. Frontier, obviously, in terms of what they were doing, they have a slightly different strategy in the way in which they're marketing things. The way in which we're putting Pheonix Point together is that we will be as open and honest as we can. And if we can't, and that's not saying they're not honest, you know what I mean, I'm not being horrible. The point here is that we have a slightly different strategy in the way in which we do stuff. So you'll see as stuff goes through. Okay, so to give you a rough overview, just to echo what the guys have said to begin, this is the guy that wrote UFO and wrote turn-based strategy, coming back to his genre and reimagining his original best or most popular game, UFO, which has been reimagined by Firaxis and XCOM, but actually we're doing it slightly differently. And the quote from Kotaku is, "Pheonix Point is the fusion of XCOM and Fallout that we all want," which is, kind of the sort of the deal. It's a lot darker than the XCOM series. It's a lot more gribbly. And probably, if we could we show the intro video, folks? Would that be okay?
Yeah, can I just chip in very quickly?
Yeah.
I've had a question from Twitch chat. Will we be answering questions from the outside? Yes, we
Yes,
will be
we
answering questions outside. I'm going to click send. I'm right here. So I am monitoring the Twitch chat. If anybody watching in on the stream would like to ask any questions.
Yep.
If anybody in the Twitch stream would like to answer any questions, that would also be very welcome.
So clueless but not useless.
Yeah, absolutely. Could we, guys, can we play the video? Is that all right?
Yep.
You want to scroll up and you want some sound.
My sound's on.
Sound? Gentlemen, sound? Okay. Wind it back.
I'll go back.
Let us know when we got sound. There we go. And just to
Hello, I'm Pheonix, the designer of the original XCOM series. Now we're returning to the genre that I created, turn-based tactics, world-based strategy, and a terrifying alien menace. In the near future, Earth is devastated by a Pandora virus released from melting permafrost. Human civilization is reduced to worn factions and isolated havens. You play the role of a leader of a small group of soldiers, scientists, and engineers brought together by the Pheonix Project, an organization prepared to protect Earth in a time of peril. The Pandora virus incorporates human and animal DNA to create horrific mutations. You will face a constantly evolving threat that will mutate and adapt to your tactics. The intelligence of these alien hybrids will present you with new challenges in every battle. You also face huge and terrifying monsters that require tactical thinking and coordination to bring down. The geoscape returns as your strategic view will give you more detail and importance. Aliens operate under cover of the dark and critical mist rolling across the surface of the globe, harboring all manner of horrors. They control the sea, you control the skies, and you fight for the land. Interceptions take on a whole new dimension
Something you should definitely take away from that is that Julian obviously needs a new office.
I was going to say, please support the game so they can have some light bulbs.
Yeah. Please support the game so we can work not under canvas.
And paper to draw on
Yeah.
cardboard.
Okay. So right. So that gives you a little bit of an introduction, gives you a bit of a sense of what's going on. Now, what Kev has got loaded up on his machine is the current demonstration of the build. Now, this is a 2-level demonstration that has been released in limited form to show you how the gameplay is going to work. You can see already in it, and Kev's going to load it up, and hopefully that'll appear up in a minute. Yep. Okay, so you'll see that already there are significant changes in relation to the way in which this works compared to other games of the same type. You probably saw from the trailer that we've got enemy characters who are much larger than the soldiers and the troopers. Those enemy characters are sectional as well, so what can happen is that you can blow off a limb, you can get rid of a part of the character, and that kind of gives you a sort of sense of how they operate and how they work. You do have some characters who are equivalent of humans, so you've sort of got the crab men, haven't you, which are sort of about the same size. But certainly the alien queen and is somewhat larger, and she can also she can spawn, so she's capable of producing more young as the game goes on. Now, that gives you a bit of a sense of the play. Now, what was talked about with Ghost Recon Shadow Wars, Ghost Recon Shadow Wars had a different implemented movement and firing system to any of Julian's other games. Now, you'll notice when Kev is hovering over some of the characters here, that you've got some pathing points that are coming up. And what that pathing information is telling you is how safe it is to move to particular locations. So when you go into that location, it's going to give you some indications of who has got line of sight on you, what kind of damage you could expect from taking from them, and so on and so forth. So it's actually quite detailed in that tactical level, allows you a sort of a bit of management of that strategy as things go through. So yeah, okay, Kev, you go kill some people.
I was going to say, it's true, because it's quite difficult in a game like XCOM, and even actually to an extent, I would say Chaos Reborn. Sometimes you move to a location thinking, I'll move to there and I'll hit that enemy, and you move to a space and suddenly you're like, oh, I can't see that enemy from here, and I don't understand why. So actually, this is something I played in Ghost Recon, which is where you can highlight a square in that and you can see all the line of sight from that square. So there's no kind of, it removes that slight guesswork element from the strategy, which I know that a lot of strategy fans find frustrating. I think we're going to come on to it. We've had a question from Twitch chat about, because obviously we talked about the RNG and the sort of 80% to hit thing. How is Pheonix Point doing that differently? I know that you've talked about a ballistics modelling system. From my perspective, Ghost Recon, when you fire, you will always hit an enemy, and when you target an enemy, it shows you the damage you're guaranteed to do, and then it shows you a bit of damage that you might do. So there's like an element of RNG, and what that means is that strategically there are some enemies you might kill them, or they might have like one hit point left, and that's the gamble. But there's no like, I've fired and completely missed.
Yeah, so the key thing is in terms of the design of the eventual system that's going to be used there. At the moment, everything hits. That's what happens at the moment. Everything hits. So within this demonstration, you'll see every shot will hit and will work. In the eventual worked out system, there will be a percentage chance added to that. But the one thing we want to get away from is the point blank range 99%, how could I miss him issue. That is the primary issue to deal with. That said, there's always that discussion about what does what you're seeing actually represent, because is not the person who is at point blank range in front of you actually trying to dodge while you're trying to, and so on and so forth. So there is an argument there, but we certainly as a team recognize that that is one of the number one whinge things that people do, quite legitimate whinge. They do is they go, I should have hit him, he was right in front of me, and actually you want that to feel visceral, you want that to feel connected in terms of what's there. So yeah. Okay, so as I say, Kev is going to carry on through and obliterate some monsters for us. To give you a bit of sense of the background, the Earth is in 2047, if I remember rightly. There is some advertised literature that says it's 2057. It's actually 2047. Apologies for any confusions there, and we may have one or two people say that, because it was said in the fig that it was 2057. It's actually 2047. And the Earth has gone from today to this particular state. As Julian has mentioned, the permafrost has melted, and this alien bacteria has infected us and started to destroy the world's population. If you were here last night and were here for some of the readings, then I read one of the short stories that we've released as part of the campaign. These are telling the story of those 30 years. So if you were looking to find out what happened from 2017 to 2047, then they tell that story in part all across the world. And it's actually one of the challenges as a writer is to write short stories that are set everywhere. I've done a piece set in India. I've done a piece set in Bulgaria. I've done a piece set in the USA. I've done a piece set in the south of England. We really do want to make it a global myth. And those of you that have played XCOM or played some of the older UFO games may remember having a nice big planet with lots of regions and dealing with the alien threat in different regions. Well, there is a similar strategic map. However, that strategic map is gradually uncovered because the title of the game, Pheonix Point, refers to your original base. That is the base that you start out in. You then start to uncover what is going on because all the communication across the world has gone down. So you start to uncover what is going on in the other regions and in the other countries that are still surviving. Now, it's not just you attempting to save the world. The Pheonix Project is attempting to save the world, and you are that commander. But there is also a faction called New Jericho who are attempting to save the world, and they are very anti-alien. They are very pro-human, and they are desperate to take the fight to the aliens with every big gun they can find. They have an agenda. That agenda is particularly militaristic in terms of a solution. Another faction that are present in the game are the Disciples of Anu, and the Disciples of Anu have found methods to connect the alien mutations to humans and to stabilize. So they're actually a mutant faction. They're not controlled by the aliens, but they are, they are all mutated, and they are also attempting to create a coexistent world where their agenda as mutants will out, as it were. But they will still defeat the alien, but their agenda will out. And then there's a third faction called Synedrian. Synedrian are an eco-terrorist, eco-warrior, eco-society faction who essentially have discovered ways to repel the aliens and use defensive technology to begin reclaiming the land whilst the aliens remain in the sea. Now, with Synedrian, again, there is another agenda, there's another sort of set to. So from the Pheonix Point's perspective, or the Pheonix Project's perspective, you have to make choices between who you ally with. And each of these factions are quite layered. Beneath them, there are different agendas, competing agendas going on. So similar to, I guess, the minor factions in a system in Elite Dangerous, who you ally with in one of the Pheonix Point, say in New Jericho, if you ally with a particular NPC in New Jericho, that NPC starts to gain status in that particular faction, and therefore their faction's agenda, their faction's politics will start to shape towards promoting that particular NPC and that particular NPC's group, and so on and so forth. So all of those narratives interlock in a way in which you drive everything forwards. And those factions change and rotate around you as things move on. Now, there are exclusive technologies to each of them, as you can probably make out. New Jericho, you're going to get most of your guns and equipment from New Jericho, things like exoskeletons and the kind of external technology, external military technology is what you would get from them. From the Disciples of Anu, you begin to start understanding the alien threat in terms of its genetics, and you begin to start understanding how you can enhance your soldiers genetically to ensure that they are best resistant. But of course, if you start taking that technology in from the disciples of Anu, guess what New Jericho's going to think? Right, infected? What's going on here? So there is always a competing set of choices to be made. And similarly, the Sanhedrian faction have an ability to repel the alien mist. So I don't think the mist features in this, but you can see it in the background. The aliens have an ability to use this mist to disorientate humans and to heal their own kind and to effectively use as part of their warfare mechanic. In the stories, the mist is one of the first things that came out of the sea, and it caused people to effectively walk into the sea, never to be seen again. So the mist appears on the strategic map, and it's something you have to deal with certain technologies as you go through.
Can I ask a gameplay question?
Yeah.
So you're highlighting individual limbs and components on the enemies. Is that something you can do on smaller enemies and on humans as well?
It depends on the enemy.
Lean into the mic, Kev.
Am I too far?
There you go.
No, it depends on the enemy. All of the bosses and mini-bosses, you will be able to manually aim at all of the different body parts. But the smaller enemies, you can't.
Right.
However, the sniper is one of the classes that actually has an active ability that will allow him to target individual body parts.
Okay.
But when the ballistic system is added, of course, if a certain body part is behind cover, you're not going to be able to hit that body part.
Yeah. Well, you've obviously been talking about the different factions and your relationship with those. Obviously, one of the things in any kind of post-apocalyptic fiction like this is that a lot of the time, the humans are in equal, if not more danger to you than the enemy threat.
Yep.
Is there human-on-human battles in
Yes.
Pheonix Point?
Yes. Essentially, you can anger the factions in such a way as they will turn on you. Similarly, you've also got, and this is trailed in the fiction, one of the most famous creatures that Julian worked on in the UFO games was the chrysalid. If anybody remembers the... Right. So there is a known trait of the alien to be able to infect humans in a way that you are not immediately knowledgeable that they are infected. So you can end up with your soldiers and members of your home base who are actually infected. So you have to turn and screen your troopers just in case, in terms of what's going on.
It's like the thing. It's like the thing. You're all just in a room arguing about blood tests until it all just goes crazy and you take each other apart.
The thing is one of our inspirations actually. is one of the sources. So similarly, there is a mechanic. There's a willpower point mechanic added to the game, which relates to the way in which your soldiers are dealing with the trauma of their situation as well. One of the things I'm quite keen on, and this comes across in some of my fiction, is a realistic treatment of individuals in games that is representative of things that happen and of how people are. So there will be characters available to you, hopefully, who will have detailed backgrounds and will have realistic baggage in terms of their lives. And we want that to be part of what's reflected. We want to see that, because we want the people who should be heroes saving the world, your core group of 5 or core group of 4, they should be representative. They should be representative of anybody. Any kind of culture, any kind of society, any kind of person, able-bodied or otherwise, in terms of the way in which they are. And I think that's very important. So we're looking at ways in which we can make sure that is as implemented as possible, to give us wider representation as we can.
Okay. Can I just catch up with a few Twitch questions?
Yep.
How many sort of classes are there for the soldiers?
Right. Yes. Okay. So I think, Kev, is it 7 at the moment?
I think it planned there are 5 main classes.
That's
Each
right.
main class has got 3 subclasses.
Yeah. So gives a clear indication. There is some of that is faction specific. Now, similar, and I'm sure, in terms of your experience, you can ally with the Federation and do some jobs for them, and then go off and ally with the Empire and do some jobs for them. There is a way in which you can manage your relationship with different places to unlock different things. but that is all dependent on your pathway and your narrative pathway through the game in terms of what you're choosing to do.
Okay. Are there? There's just a quick question here. Why doesn't the heavy have a willpower ability? Like, is it just because it's still in development and the heavy doesn't have a?
Yeah.
We're a good 18 months out from
Yeah.
being completed, and there's a lot of the abilities that aren't in yet. Most of what you do see in this demo is placeholder.
Yeah.
So a lot of the animations, the sound effects, the mechanics, the
Yeah.
UI, that's all going to be replaced as it goes through development.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Not
sound
every.
effects are really familiar from somewhere. I've heard that alien scream before
Quake.
somewhere. Is it? What's that?
Quake,
That's it.
and
It's
there's a few from
Quake.
StarCraft in there as well, I think.
And
Thank
and
you, that was
also
winding me
your characters will not just be a bearded sniper guy and a load of bald-headed grunts. There will be others. There was one question that I recall actually that was asked on Reddit, and I'll just cover it here. For any fans of Laser Squad, Corporal Jonelan, Private Turner, Trooper Zephyr, the roster list from there, they won't feature in Pheonix Point. There is a reason they won't feature in Pheonix Point, okay? Obviously, Julian has 3 different main IPs, or at least if they do feature in Pheonix Point, I'll get a bit stroppy.
Is it? Is it the board game?
Well, not the.
We can talk about the board game because the board game was at UK Games Expo. So
Sure. No. It's we can talk about Laser Squad. That's fine. We can talk about the board game. But the point here is that what I wouldn't want to happen is those characters were used in Laser Squad. If we brought them into here, we would essentially be reimagining them into here. I'd rather save them for Laser Squad. That's about as far as I can say. All right. So.
I got a question.
Great.
Go for it.
I was going to say, so how can you customize your grunts, and are you going to get attached to them in a way that when they die,
Yeah.
you feel?
So first of all, we've got a couple of ideas on how we're going to do that background system, and then I'll hand over to Kev, and Kev can talk a little bit about progression. We don't have a lot in terms to talk about progression at this stage.
Kev, can you either speak nearer to the mic, or I don't know if the sound guys can turn you up a little bit, but Twitch can't hear you all that well.
I'm not saying anything.
To be fair, I can't hear your mic either.
No, you've got to be quite close
Yeah.
to it, I'm afraid.
And after that, what we'll do is we'll then open it up to the floor if you guys are happy to do that.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Great. So first of all, the narrative background system. So what I want to do is I'm looking at a system whereby there will be a set of backgrounds that are listed in a database system, and when you generate your initial grunts, they will basically the database will take bit from there, 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 bump. And then that will generate, and there will be enough of those to generate very different and differentiated backgrounds. What they will also do is give you clues as to what regions in the world are still not underwater and are still active, because some of them will have backgrounds about different places and so on and so forth. So that is the idea in terms of what we're doing. There will be a customizable feature. We have announced this. There will be a customizable feature for you to write in your own backgrounds. You can do that as you want to. And the mythology resources that will be available along with the stories will enable you to write those backgrounds in a way that is accurate in relation to the mythos. Sure, if you want Private Santa Claus, then that's entirely up to you. I'm not going to sit and kind of get very grumpy about you wanting Private Santa Claus, but what we want to do is provide you with an opportunity to be able to write something that fits in with the mythos wherever possible.
I want to tell a story, but I'm not going to. Smooth knows what I'm talking about. There's a question here which I'm just going to read verbatim because I confess I don't understand it. I'm presuming the person asking this question knows more about Pheonix Point than I do. How does the deployment system work? You've got 500 points. Can you increase them? Different classes cost different points, or points is just for the demo?
Yeah, it really is just for the demo at the moment. One of the things that was an idea that was being toyed with in the very early development was having a multiplayer system similar to what they have in the Firaxis one, which was later abandoned for lack of interest. And I think that's just a system that was left over from that to essentially allow you to just have a fair point system so both players could deploy equal strength forces. But when the game is finished, deployment is going to work based on the type of vehicle that you arrive to the battlefield in. So different vehicles will allow you to have more soldiers, and then depending on the configuration of the vehicle, that will affect where you can place them on the actual map.
And we should add to that, the stretch goal for vehicles on the battlefield was unlocked, so there will be vehicles on the battlefield.
I've related questions to that actually,
Yep.
because something quite interests me, because obviously one of the stretch goals wasn't got to on the FIG, which was the mobile base.
Yep.
Now, just as a general question, I'm not talking specifically, but surely like a feature like being able to move your base around the map is quite a big gameplay feature.
Yep.
So how does a game design work around the fact that actually what would be a key gameplay mechanic may or may not be there?
Tricky one. Okay.
Surely it's part of the fundamental. That's what I'm saying. Isn't it
Yeah.
part of the fundamental design? I appreciate you can't afford to make the assets or the coding for it, but surely it's...
The Slacker backer funding is still going.
Yeah.
So at this stage, we aren't at a stage where we need to make that choice. Because also underwater missions are also something that was trailed, and something that people have gone, oh, that would be amazing, actually changes, because the specific thing about underwater missions is that the aliens are native to the water, so their entire movement system will be altered, and your movement system will be altered.
Yeah, presumably if you're swimming, it's like every unit is a flying unit, presumably.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to what we're looking at there. What I will say is that, as I said, we're not at the stage where we need to make that choice. We will have to make that choice. That said, we do have a list of features, some of which were trailed in the backing, and some of which weren't trailed in the crowdfunding. We have a list of features of what is feature complete, as in everything Julian wants to put into the game. Those are still a list of of options. And what we don't want to do is make decisions that immediately cut those off. So even if there is a choice made in terms of not allowing that particular thing, what will then happen is that is the next thing on the list of development features. So we will then look again at how we can implement that thing in terms of the narrative structure.
Okay.
Can I get one more question in?
Yep.
Is there any plans for co-op or something like that, playing with your friends?
At the moment, the decision's been made in relation to it being a story mode campaign single player. There have been discussions on co-op. Now, there's nothing stopping you, right, you move this guy, and taking turns and hot seating. But there have been some discussions in relation to... Yeah.
That's quite old school.
Well, we used to play Moonbase Assault by walking out the room. I used to have the computer in a corner, and then someone would have to go outside while I took my turn, and then they would go crazy stuff. So there has been some discussion in relation to that. At this stage, we want to just assess where we're at in terms of what's there. Julian's just got back from E3 last week, so it's going to take a little bit of time to work out whether some of those things are possible. But it is something we have talked about, and certainly, I'll say it straight. I'd like a co-op feature. I think co-op feature for this kind of game would work really well in terms of what's there.
And presumably, is there some sort of multiplayer deathmatchy type?
No.
No, not bothering? Okay.
No. They've decided to go with a single-player experience in terms of what's there, and I think that's probably the right choice at this stage. It might come down the track, but at the moment, that's how we're doing it. And particularly because we want this very involved narrative, so the narrative wants to bend around you, and we want to make that the main focus to begin with.
So with that in mind, I just want to quickly rattle through these questions. One of them is a huge question.
Okay.
I'm sure you're going to say it's something that we
let
look
these
at.
folks ask some questions in a minute.
Yeah, as well. We'll have questions for everybody. I'm just trying to keep up before I lose the questions in Twitch chat.
Cool.
Modding?
Yeah, it's built in from the ground up. It's not completely moddable to start with, but the game is being designed with modding in mind straight away from the start.
Awesome. Are the weapons craftable and modifiable, or are weapons kind of fixed?
Not decided yet.
Okay. All I've written down is animal companions. I think I'm trying to remember. I think the question was obviously with the aliens, you've got creatures of different scales you're fighting against. And obviously, like UFO had like a drone you can take. Can you have like a police dog? Yeah. Is that a thing?
Possible.
Okay.
Okay, not decided.
Okay.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Not decided.
Awesome.
Any others? Okay, should we open up to the floor? Let's let people go around. John, are you okay to go around? Grab the... there you go. Oh, Alien's got it. Brilliant. Okay.
This is also, by the way, not going very well and usually goes
Are
a
you
lot better
dying?
than this.
Oh,
I'm
dear.
dying repeatedly, which
Oh,
is...
great. He's dying. Yeah, he's getting...
Classic Gollop, really.
Yeah, getting hammered. Over to you, Alien. Anybody with any questions, please put your hands up. Alien will come around to you. Okay, yes.
Sorry, just for those listening on the audio, that was a question about how you will manage the different difficulty levels in the game.
Sure. So the microphone's not on at the moment, Alien, so hopefully that will get sorted out. Yeah, so the planning at the moment is that we're going to have a flexible level, effectively, in terms of the way in which it works.
Julian's very big on having accessible to everybody, so different difficulties.
However, the AI system has been designed so that the aliens evolve to your tactics. So what is happening with the Pandora virus is that there are mutations occurring on all of the alien creatures that you see. And the aliens, if they are continually defeated, if particular types of aliens are continually defeated, then mutated aliens will arrive in battles that are enhancements and improvements of those particular type of aliens. And if those are more effective, you will start to see more of those aliens start to appear. So the evolution mechanic to the AI is something that we're very, very excited about, because it's going to be cool. That said as well, I've got a consideration, and I'm at the moment, and some people who are on Reddit might have read a little bit of this. There was a nice thread started about statistics and how much you should know about your enemy. At the moment in the demo, you can see the amount of hit points the enemy's got left and so on and so forth. With this being a horror game, and with the fact it's turn-based gives us a bit of a weakness, because trying to keep it all, oh my God, it's all around me and it's all attacking, is a bit difficult with turn-based. So that's a consideration, but it's got to be turn-based, so we'll keep that. However, knowing your enemy's stats, I think, is not necessarily as useful. So at the moment, we're in a bit of a discussion about how much you will know about how injured your enemy is, and what behavior it may exhibit that's different in each occasion. So yeah, much as, yes, there is a slider in terms of the difficulty, that particular enhancement allows the difficulty to start to change based on the way in which you're succeeding. Does that kind of answer the... Good, cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually, because that kind of thing of providing information, because there's a tendency in games when you're talking about increasing or decreasing the difficulty.
Yeah.
A lot of games developers are just like you set it to hard, it's like, yeah, the aliens all get 50% extra hit points, you get 50% less ammo, and that's perceived as making the game more difficult. But actually, when you look at something like, just to go completely off the wall, something like Invisible Ink obviously is a game about managing line of sight of guards. I don't know if you've played it. If you haven't, go and play it. It's amazing. On the hard, so on the normal mode, when you open a door, if a guard has line of sight, you can see the line of sight projected on the floor, even if you can't see the guard. In the really hard mode, unless you can see the person who has line of sight, you can't see their line of sight. So you open a room and you see a floor full of blue tiles, and you're like, this is a safe room, and you walk in and there's a camera in every corner of the room that you couldn't see, and suddenly the whole thing goes red. So that's a really interesting, that what you're talking about there with enemy information, like I would like a level of the game to play like Ghost Recon, where I can make strategic decisions about whether an enemy will die before they can return fire and how close they are to death.
Yeah.
But actually on the more advanced mode, the option to say, well, actually the enemy has the same strength, but you're going to have to take a judgment as to whether or not they're going to be able to return fire or not, is a really interesting way of adapting.
It also, Julian's known for RNG in his games. We know that the the combat system in this is slightly less RNG than some of his other games. This is where more of the RNG starts to feature, because it's kind of less in front of you, if you see what I mean, because it's a different mechanic. Anyway, any others? Yeah.
Would it be multiplayer? And will different factions play against each other, like the aliens, the humans, and the different factions?
So, as I said just a bit before, we're not looking at multiplayer at the moment. We are looking at co-op. We're not looking at versus. Did you mean in terms of the factions, will they be fighting each other or playable? Will they be playable? At this stage, no. That has, however, been discussed. The reason they won't be playable at this stage is that the idea of the story is that it depends on your choice. So as the Pheonix Project, if you want to be the Pheonix Project New Jericho, you can be the Pheonix Project New Jericho, which effectively means you ally up with a very authoritarian New Jericho army officer. You decide to obliterate the Anu settlements. You decide to obliterate the Sanhedrian settlements, and you follow New Jericho all the way down to the end. So if you see what I mean, it's almost organic in that regard. So you can play almost as that faction, but you are this one base that is then basically saying, we're putting your flag on the roof. Now, what we might do, might even implement the flags, so you can essentially do it. But it should be through your choice as opposed to ticking a box in the starting screen, if you see what I'm saying. So that's kind of our vision in terms of what's there. However, later on, we'll see where things are, and if it's something that people are desperate for, then I'm sure we can start discussing it and seeing what happens. Does that kind of answer the question? Good, cool, okay. Any others? Yep.
About the missions in a game,
Yeah.
are they all like kill all the enemies like
No.
in old UFO?
No. They are. We've already had discussions on some of this. There is a resource system, so you have to supply your base. There will be missions related to eradicate this, eradicate that. That's fine. There's old technology available that you've got to reclaim. There are hints in the story fiction that's already been released that will indicate to you some of the technology that is still out there. For example, one particular story set in India is Launch Codes. Launch Codes is about a Phoenix Point operative stopping the Indian military from launching a nuclear strike in 2032. Somebody has those nuclear launch codes. So you're always looking at different things. I'm aware in XCOM had saved the scientist and saved the MP and saved the senator. There were a couple of those hard-coded missions. We're looking at a few different things that will work around those lines. Not quite like that. More, as I say, more about uncovering technology and finding things that will be particularly useful to you. But it won't be just go here, destroy this, go here, destroy that. In terms of what's there, particularly if you're testing technology, you may even find that your objective is to go somewhere and test something, or just to survive, get your people out, run through an attack of aliens. We have looked at some of Julian's greatest hits in that regard and gone, okay, well maybe the cyber hordes, the repel all the robots until such point as you are overwhelmed, like a rearguard action effectively. So we've looked at a variation, and I think adding vehicles to the mix makes this a lot more viable, because we can actually start to have multiple objectives on the map that you can use the vehicles for, which would be quite useful.
I can't believe we've got this far without talking about procedural generation. Are the maps randomly generated, or are they predefined battle maps? Because there are two opposing schools of thought, aren't there?
Yeah.
There's actually both.
Yeah,
So
that's what I was
the
going to
idea
say.
is that the majority of the main mission maps will be procedurally generated, but there will be some set-piece missions that will have a specific map for them.
And also in the strategy, in the globe defense, the envisaging of the globe is based on water levels rising to a particular degree. So certain cities will be underwater. If anybody's from Holland, I'm sorry. The water levels, I think the water levels are set to rise something like 60 feet or something like that. So essentially, the idea is that cities that are surviving might well be featured. And my hope, and I haven't completely cleared this yet, but there's something I want to do, is that as you hover over those locations on the map, they will give you an indication of what you know about that particular place. So, if you learn about what's going on in Washington, D.C., it will give you a bit of a potted history as to what happened in Washington, D.C. between 2017 and 2047 and so on.
If there's one thing I can add to that, because I know this is something that comes up an awful lot when it comes to map generation, when you have to defend your base, and that will be something that comes up, the base that you have to defend, the map will accurately represent the base that you get to build within the game.
Yeah.
It's not going to
That's
be
what
a
I was
pre-set
just about to
map.
ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
As I
that was
knew
my
it
favourite
I
bit
knew
from
it was
UFO
coming.
when the aliens come into your base, and it is the base that you've been building. That's
If-
incredible.
If any of you, I'm not a particular fan of the film, but anybody see Independence Day 2? Okay, right. So if you followed their online internet campaign, there was a website called War of 1996 and warof1996.com. And it was a globe, a rotating globe, that gave you a timeline of events between Independence Day 1 and Independence Day 2. And it was really clever. And what it did is it highlighted all these, as you put the mouse over it, highlighted different locations in the world as to what happened. And that was one of the things that when I went out to Bulgaria last year, I sat there and went, have a look at this. This is what we should be doing. So hopefully we can find some ways to implement. Because I love getting, okay, so, all right, I'm a writer guy, but I love getting all of that tangible information to you so you feel like it's all going on all around you in terms of what's happening, and that material is accessible in terms of what you're doing. So yeah. Any other questions?
There's a couple of questions here.
Okay,
I'll leave that one till last. When your soldiers die, someone's asked, when your soldiers die, do you see them come back as mutated versions?
Possible.
Okay,
Can't comment.
awesome.
Only question I couldn't comment on.
The vehicles, the moving around vehicles, are these just personnel carriers, or are they vehicles with their own weapon sets?
Okay, we're looking at them as APCs, but we're looking at them as armed APCs. There will not be, and this was a little bit of I was kind of thinking, am I going to get to write a tank battle? I'd really like to do a tank. I'll basically take a load of tanks, and no, there won't be tanks. Oh, I'd like to do a tank battle. So no, you're looking more at APCs and transports, jeeps, Humvees. The equivalent, slightly more science fiction than that. But yeah, effectively that kind of light armament, slightly better. You're 50 cal, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Other question is any option to climb up onto raised areas
Yep.
without needing ladders and drain pipes?
Yeah, depends on mutations.
Ooh, Spider-Man, Spider-Man.
Yeah, there are different classes in relation to that, but also there are multiple levels, and the terrain, we've had some ideas in relation to, because this is an alien virus that affects the flora and the fauna. So damaging the terrain sometimes isn't a good idea, because sometimes the terrain gets angry and it damages you back, which we've also, there are a couple of instances in the fiction where some of that happens.
That's cool. I just had a sudden thought when you were talking about things climbing up. I think it would be an amazing level if your guys are all on the top of like a skyscraper and there's aliens clawing their way up the side of the building and you have to shoot them all off before they get to the top. I'll give you that one for free. I'd play that. That would be amazing. Can you wait for the helicopter to extract you? That'd be an incredible mission. Anyway.
Get them to the chopper.
Yeah, go to the chopper. I'm basically there.
Great, okay.
There was a question about when will we see new content and a new video, which is always the great thing when a thing has just been released. People are always like, brilliant, when's the next one?
Yeah.
What is the question?
Legitimate. We're currently getting organised. I think is the setup. I have one reveal in relation to that. What we will be doing is that it was stated that there were only going to be 2 additional stories, because we've released all the content for the crowdfunding, and there will be 2 additional stories in the fiction anthology that Jonas and I are writing. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to be releasing more stories